If you want more of the conventional wisdom on sales and growing revenue, this podcast isn't for you. Throw away your closing tactics, tricks, and tips and learn what the top 1% income earners do to create results. This is the OnPurpose Growth Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this episode, this most recent episode of the OnPurpose Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Bryan McDonald, partner at OnPurpose Growth. And today I've got on with me a really special guest, Shane Kidwell. He actually owns multiple businesses. The two prominent ones are Dwell Mortgage and Next Level Loan Officers. And what we're going to be talking about is how Shane is growing his wealth with growing multiple businesses, and he's doing this on purpose. So Shane, thanks for being on, and why don't you give a better idea of your background to everybody, because I just covered the surface on that one.
What's up, Bryan? Thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I'm excited too, because I think your audience is so like-minded to our audience at Dwell. And so it's just a blessing to be on here. I kind of start in the middle, and then I work my way back and work my way forwards in my story, because I think there's some pivotal moments in my life.
Yeah.
For the last 12 years, I was a professional fireman. That was really like my goal out of high school. It was a dream of mine to be a fireman. I was supposed to be flying home on September 11th, and I got up that morning, the September 11th. Like for young kids, like there was an actual September 11th, right? Yeah. And I remember vividly where I was that morning. I got up at my aunt's house in California, and I was getting ready to get on the plane, and my aunt said, "Turn on the TV." And I was getting ready. I was getting ready to go into college, and I had kind of a moment where it's like, and I'd always thought about going into the military and what do I do with my life? And I had this decision to make, and I decided to go into college at University of Washington and become a firefighter. And so, like, for me, like the 12 years as a fireman was some of the most incredible opportunities and experiences of my life. I grew up without a dad. My dad passed away when I was very, very young. And so the fire department was really, for me as an adult, where I really matured. And I learned a lot of those skills that a son learns from their dad. I learned as an adult on the job as a fireman. So it was an incredible opportunity. But about halfway through my career, I got hurt on the job, hurt my back very badly, lifted a very, very heavy patient. Believe it or not, people, there are 500-pound people out there. And myself and one other guy lifted one. I blew out my back, and it really triggered in me this desire to have a backup plan. So like I didn't like fall into business or have like a family legacy of business to like fulfill. Although my dad was an amazing entrepreneur, I did it out of fear. And so like I got into business, and the rest I'll kind of dive into later. But my story really was one based on fear. It was one based on a scarcity mindset. And that was because, as I mentioned, when I was 7 years old, my dad got brain cancer. And he was larger than life, owned multiple businesses, traveled the world, acquiring planes for Horizon Airlines. He was one of the founders. And I remember he would come home from the USSR with one of those fur caps on, or he'd come home one day with like a sword from India. And like, so he was this larger than life, guy who I just was so blessed to have in my life. And when he died, my mom, my brother, and I were left with nothing. We had no life insurance. My dad was good at a lot of things, but he wasn't great at managing money. And we had no life insurance. I'm 7, my brother's 9. My mom had been a stay-at-home mom. You can imagine like what my mom was probably going through at the time. And so we had to sell my dad's business for $1 so the creditors wouldn't come after us. I remember when she went to C First Bank. This will date us. They don't even have C First anymore. It was bought, I think, like by B of A. They wouldn't allow her to pull money out of our account. So this was my childhood, it was a scarcity childhood. And so as I was, growing and maturing in life, that was just built into my DNA, like really to always over prepare because something bad's going to happen. Right. Yeah. And that's not necessarily a great reason to have any decisions made in life, but that's what got me ironically to where I was as a fireman. So fast forward now, I've been a fireman. I've worked at the busiest station on the West Coast. Right at the foot of the Space Needle. For those of you who aren't super familiar with Seattle, you've probably heard of the Space Needle. Yeah. If you ever watch like Monday Night Football, they'll typically show the Space Needle once or twice. And so I worked right there. So, I mean, I was going on anywhere from 20 to 30 calls a day. I was up all night, worked 24 hours a day. I'd get off at 7:30 in the morning, run home, take a shower, put my suit on, and go into one of my jobs. So as I mentioned, I got hurt on the job. And out of fear, I said, I got to have something else. I've got to have something to fall back on. And if I'm being honest, I was getting bored, right? For those of us on this call that are entrepreneurial, your brain never stops thinking business, right? And it's like a painter. Like my wife is, she's always like, my wife is very non-entrepreneurial. And so she's like, when do you turn it off? I'm like, honey, when does a painter stop looking at life as though it's a painting?
Right.
Like they're always painting. They're walking down the road. They see a flower, a dog, a child eating an ice cream cone, and they paint it in their mind. That's what I was doing with business. So I got my mortgage license. I faked it till I made it. I was on Google all the time trying to figure out what loans were, how to build a database. And my business started growing and growing and growing. And I took a lot of the skills I learned as a blue collar fireman, how to relate to anyone at any time at their worst moment. Like if you can relate to anyone, you can sell them anything. And that'll be true from now till the end of time, right? Yeah. It doesn't matter what technology comes around. If you can relate to a person and you can find some area of common ground, you can sell to them. And so I took that skill. I took a little bit of my entrepreneurial brain from my dad, some branding, and I started to build and build and build. So I became a branch manager, and I started a coaching platform with a couple of my really good friends. And I started to leverage. And one thing that was always really important for me as I started growing in business was this old saying. I remember who said this, but you got to get all the juice out of the berry. Like my goal was, listen, like, and actually, you know what? Like my family, they grew up farmers. And so I think I probably had heard this from farming stories, but when you're a farmer, like you use every bit of every resource, right? Like, so when you're harvesting wheat, you take the chaff from the wheat and you might turn that into compost or feed your pigs. Like you use everything. And so I'm sitting here in business and I'm like, man, I meet all these people doing mortgages and I meet really cool loan officers around the country that would love to be able to like leverage the way I leveraged in a very short amount of time. Like I was part-time and I hit top 1% in the nation my first 3 years.
Wow.
And so I was still a full-time fireman. And like I was, and so for me, I was blessed with an amazing team. I was blessed really with a creative mindset that I just came up with funky stuff all the time. It seemed to work. And then I leveraged it. And so I'm like, man, I got to get more juice out of this berry. I'm doing something cool in a really cool way. Why not share this idea with other people? So myself and 4 other business partners all had similar ideas. And so we founded a coaching platform. And then I'm getting bored about a year later, Bryan, and I'm like, man, I got to get more juice out of the berry. So then I got a mortgage company and I got a consulting firm. But I got all these clients that come in every day and they're getting quotes for their homeowners insurance and auto insurance and life insurance and all these things. And the customer service is terrible, like terrible. And because what's happened now is these robots have taken over for human interaction. Yeah, right. And so now instead of trying to be good at anything, I just pay an automated system to do something for me and the quality is terrible. But we give it to you for a cheap price, so don't worry about the quality, right? Like that's always the thing. I'm like, man, I got to fill the gap here. There's got to be more juice I can get out of this berry. So I started an insurance company. And so I started managing and juggling all these different businesses. And really, when I originally started, it was all based on fear. But as I've navigated my journey, I mean, like when you grow up without a dad as a young man, that does a lot to your psychology and your makeup. Mm-hmm. Super insecure, had thick glasses, got picked on all the time. I remember that I was really overweight because I would just sit at home by myself, depressed a lot, had a lot of depression and anxiety. But like I started to address my challenges and I got coaches and I surrounded myself with high thinking people. People that were in different walks of life that created very uncomfortable situations for me. One of my coaches, a man by the name of David Goggins, who's famous for talking about being uncomfortable. Yep. And I hired him and David and I went through an amazing journey of uncomfortable situations. And it was amazing for me. And so I think that's been my journey in business has been, started out fear. And then I realized that, you know what, I think we all have these God-given abilities. Now, it's inherent in our DNA, and you can either embrace what you have or you can fight it. The reality is if you embrace it, you can do amazing things with it. If you fight it, you're just going to be a partial version of yourself. Mm. And isn't it a shame how like a lot of us, because of our insecurities, our mindsets, or the stories of others that want to hold us down, we don't do what we've been given the opportunity to do, right? We care so much about everybody else's opinion that we don't care about our own, right? Right. So as I started shifting my mindset and thinking, you know what, if people don't like me for who I am, that's okay with me. I listen to rap music. I drive electric scooters in my office. I drink a lot of coffee. I have fun. I don't take things too serious until I do. And then I take it real serious.
Yeah.
It's like, but why can't we just have fun and be who we are? Because at the end of the day, with social media, with, the mobile era that we're in, people are so instantly connected with the persona of somebody that they don't often really understand that there's a person, right? Mm-hmm. And so people try to build a persona, not just be who they are, right?
Right.
So as I've grown in business, I've really lived into being who I am, just loving the fact that like we have a lot of fun in what we do. And we're blessed like to be in a very amazing time in life. I mean, I've traveled the world and I live in one of the most amazing areas in the world. Like the fact that I can do what I want and say what I please without any repercussions is such a blessing to me, and I think as business owners and entrepreneurs and just people in general, we have so many opportunities now to just grow our business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's lots of blessings that count, and that's a whole mindset in itself to talk about. So I want to focus on one thing because, when people hear, growing wealth with multiple businesses, they may be thinking to themselves, I can't even get one off the ground. And something I heard you say was you were very depressed. You had this, negative mindset. And, there's a lot of people out there that at whatever level they are on, they're going through that. So how did you change that or accept that to get to where you're at?
A couple things. I stopped caring about what everybody else thought. And that sounds easy in theory, but that's really hard to do. But I realized, I started getting into scripture and I started just like really reading things that reminded me, like we all not many people know this, but we have this little motor, this little tank inside ourselves called our self-worth. The crazy thing about self-worth, the crazy thing about this little gadget inside of us, it automatically replenishes all the time. And what I mean by that is we are 100% always constantly filled with self-worth. Like we have a ton of value. The problem for people in life and in business is if you don't think that your ideas, your thoughts, your strategies, your words have value, you're going to be a lesser version of yourself. And so like, let's say you're a vacuum salesman. Well, if you know that your tank is full, you're going to be one badass vacuum salesman. If you don't, you won't, right? And so the reality is that we do these things in life because we don't see our value. We don't see our self-worth. And so I just think that one of the things that's so important that as I learned that over the last several years of just having value and self-worth, I think that's really, really important.
That's great. Because I think that is, that's key. And I think that leads to also what you were talking about in regards to being authentic, right? If you have high self-worth, then you can be very authentic, and that's what other people want, to see. So, you went through a time where, you knew like filling this self-worth, tank, really helped you, get through to start a business or I mean, you had two jobs, right? I mean,
yeah.
So what was your mindset once you first realized like, hey, I've got this mortgage business, and then thinking, okay, what's next? Like what was going on? What was your path?
I think that what a lot of people do is they focus on the big picture and they ignore the small picture. Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I did the opposite. For me, like, I feel like it's so important to do everything just a little bit better than everybody else. Mm. Now, for instance, that might mean that like, if you and I are competing in the podcast space, yep. I want to make my podcast 1% better than your podcast. If we're selling door to door, I want to look 1% better than you, smell 1% better than you, sound 1% better than you. And if I do that in every area of business, I'm going to win. Mm-hmm. And so I really focused on the small. I didn't focus on the big. And so the big came out of the small automatically because the small things we really focused on and had a ton of attention to detail. Mm-hmm. Now, I think if I'm being honest, I can cheat a little bit because I'm OCD. And so for me, like I'm naturally wanting everything straight, lined out, perfect. And I think that's something that's really important is for a lot of entrepreneurs, we've built everything in our head before it ever becomes reality. And there's something very powerful to building that business, building that engine, building that car, that mansion before it actually ever comes to fruition. I am so insistent on having the reality match my vision.
Got it.
And so like, that means that if like it doesn't, I'll get up at 5, I'll get up at 3, I'll work the weekends. Like I made sacrifices early on to make sure that my vision became reality. And out of that has just come a lot of business and a lot of opportunities for me. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think that the businesses just kind of came naturally through striving to always be a 10. And like, so when I go to restaurants and I see people not being a 10, it like drives me, like my wife has to be like, Shane, don't say anything, like, don't comment, like let it be, because like I just have such a desire, like people deserve to be treated well and have a 10 experience in anything they do. And so that's where like my mindset had always been. So from a branding perspective, a communication perspective, a speed perspective, how hard I work, it was always about being a 10 because we know that in life now, everybody wins a ribbon for being a 5.
Yeah.
Like everyone is celebrated for being average to the point where most people think they're working hard and they don't realize that they're average because they've never seen anybody above average. Right.
Right.
And so I like, that's just always been our mindset in anything we do. And then as I've started to like grow businesses, I think that, what I used to do is try to like overanalyze and create the perfect onboard for a business, right? What I realized is, man, sometimes you just have to puke in your lap and keep driving, right?
Well, that's it.
Like, there's no perfect way to start a business, right? Like it's so funny. We look at all these people who've been like uber successful, right? Like you see these things on social media. You see like the garage where Bezos started Amazon, right? You see like where Steve Jobs was this awkward looking, uncomfortable dude who was like fired from Apple like multiple times. We forget that when we're building our own business and we think that we have to be like the 2019 version of Jeff Bezos, right? Yep. When in reality, we just need to fall forward and stumble into success. And if we stumble forward and we do it with gusto, like we're going to be successful over time. But if we look at life with this magnifying glass, I go, today I failed, I'm done, I'm not going to be good at business. Well, you're right. If you feel like you're a failure because you're thinking of one day as being the journey, the marathon, you've lost. Like you've lost before it started. And I think that's been something for me that I've just really learned through coaching and surrounding myself with really awesome people is like, man, it's such a, like this life, this journey, it's a marathon. Mm-hmm. Like you're going to fall and you're going to fail. And I think that what, myself and my business partners have realized, we want to make small failures and have big successes. If we do that, how many failures we have is almost irrelevant. Right. If I have a bunch of small failures, they're just minor and they're no big deal. I just move right on. I don't even care. But my successes are big. We're going to win.
Well, and that goes back to something you said a little bit earlier about how when it was in your mind, you did no matter what to make it look that way. And what I hear you saying is that when things didn't start working out the right way, you didn't just throw your hands up and say, this is not working. You figured out how to make it work, right?
So it's so funny because I used to have a quitting mindset as a kid because there was nobody to push me through discomfort, right? And then I met this guy, David Goggins, and I met these other people. In your mind, you can create a reality where there's only one option. If the only option was, I'm going to climb the mountain. If it couldn't be, you're going to go back down the hill. If the option was, I'm going to climb the mountain, then you will climb the mountain. But if in your mind you say, there's one of two things I'm going to do today. I'm either going to climb the mountain or I'm going to go down the hill. Guess what happens? As soon as it gets more uncomfortable than you're used to, you go down the hill, right? And that's true for business. I mean, I was climbing Mount Rainier, and it's the highest mountain in the lower 48 states, I believe. It's like 15,000 feet.
Wow.
And as I'm climbing this, we get into, and I was not prepared. Let's just be very honest. I was totally unprepared for this hike. I think I'd gone on like one day hike before with a backpack.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, what the hell, man? How hard could it be, right? I was a fireman. I was like, what the heck? So I'm on this hike. I'm on day 2 of this hike, and we get in whiteout conditions. And for those of you who don't know, that means like you can't see your hand in front of your face. And I'm tied into these other guys. I got all this equipment on, and we're going up a vertical face to get to base camp. And base camp's like at 10,000 feet, I think. So it's pretty high up there. There's altitude stuff going on. You're trying to get your food in order. And again, I was ill prepared. And I'm asking my guide, I go, how much farther? And he goes, you'll get there when you get there. And I'm like, no, man. Like, how far? Like, if I know how far, I'll get there, right? And he goes, you'll get there when you get there. It's 1 foot in front of the next. And it was such a great reminder that, like, if I don't give myself the option to turn around, if that option isn't even allowed in my brain, if I don't allow myself to fail, I'm going to make it up the mountain, one step at a time. And so that's what I've done in business. You know, that doesn't mean that I don't have side steps or I don't have these small speed bumps, you know, on our journey. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can really like knock me down. I keep falling forward. I keep one step at a time. I keep going in that direction, and I don't give my mind the opportunity to quit.
That's amazing, because when I learned that perspective and applied it, things get done in the direction that I want to. So I'm grateful that you shared that. Yeah. So you've applied these mindsets. You're, you know, fully committed to growing your businesses. How do you move from mortgage to consulting and start building these things? Like how did you do that? How were you thinking?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I have to really compartmentalize things, because I want to make sure that I'm always like, it's almost like I'm a schizophrenic, I think, right? Like,
no way.
I'm like one owner, and then I'm the next owner, and I wear different hats. I feel like I want to go into that opportunity with a fresh mind, prepared specifically for that endeavor. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not bringing my experiences in, but I don't want to bring my biases in, right? We have biases in everything we do. Now, I'll bring my experience in and say, hey, you know what, man, I'm not going to make that mistake because I made it before my other business. But I'm not going to say, well, this guy screwed me over in this business, so that probably the same thing will happen in this business. That's negativity. Mm-hmm. Like, I only bring positivity in through my other jobs. I think what I've really done, though, is I build the mansion in my mind, and then I allow myself to start with nothing, right? Like, you know, we just got, my wife and I are just getting done selling a custom home that we built 3 years ago in the mountains. Oh, wow. And it's been an amazing blessing. It was quite a journey. I went into that with zero experience. I bought a lot, like, without even having the money. I figured out a way to get the money for the dirt, bought the dirt, had never built a home, learned on Google, put a lot of effort and energy into it. And we were able to just be blessed and sell it. And like, it'll be some generational wealth to help our family. And I guess I say that because when you're starting businesses, just start. Start. Like, one of my really good friends in our coaching platform, he said to me, and I share this story a lot because it's so powerful. He said, Shane, I start, stumble, suck, fail, like all these things, start again and succeed before you ever try.
Oh.
And that's the reality with a lot of people. They're so scared of making a mistake because they don't have their self-worth. They care too much about what you think about them and not enough about what they think about them, or they let you dictate them, that they don't ever start. They don't ever just fall forward and build something. And so with our coaching consulting firm, we've been in business for 2 years now. We have 150 plus clients. We love, like, they're like our friends. Like, we have fun. We get together with them quarterly. We share experience. We peel back the curtain. We're honest. We share our failures and our success. I think, truthfully, you make more money when you learn about other people's failures. Yeah. Because success makes you money. Failures lose you money, right? And so we want to teach people how to not lose money and how to make money. Yep. Just have a ton of fun together. And I think part of that is going back to just being authentic. Like, we are who we are. Like, you might see me, like, I'm not going to necessarily coach in a three-piece suit. Maybe I do. A lot of times it's shorts and a hat backwards, because, like, we just want to be in our element, being with people in the most comfortable way that we are. And I think that that's something that, whether you're selling insurance or vacuums or cars or building a multifamily investment business, you got to find out where you're most comfortable, because you're going to succeed the most where you're most comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the bright and shiny syndrome for people is they're searching for new places to go and make money, and it's just find where you're great at, just run with it, right? I mean, because it sounds like you've got yourself in this mode of, you found this gift that you're blessed with of starting businesses, and you're just running with that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, like, we all stop digging a foot from gold, right? And there's actually, I mean, there's true stories about guys doing that up in the Klondike Gold Rush, where they, like, stopped a foot, 3 feet from gold. they just quit too soon. I think if you have confidence in yourself, if you have self-worth, if you have, and maybe that partly that's surrounding yourself with people who like love you for who you are, you know, like your friends circle gets smaller as you become more successful. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's okay. That's a good thing. But when you surround yourself with the right people, you have self-worth, you're going to try longer and harder than somebody who doesn't. Mm. And so a lot of people fail right before other people have massive success in the exact same thing. Mm. And the difference is that I versus this other guy, I just know that I'm going to try harder. I'm going to try better, and I'm not going to quit.
Yeah. And as long as you don't quit and you keep moving in the direction where you want to go with the right mindset, it'll always work out. So
100%.
So there's this kind of, you know, you well, let me say this. You grew up without a dad after 7, right? So pivotal time in your life. And I hear this undertone of mentorship, of coaching. How has that helped you move towards this, you know, building of generational wealth, you know, in your life?
Yeah, it was pivotal. I mean, I think that when I really made the change, because I'd been a full-time fireman and I was a full-time loan originator at the same time. And I was burning myself out. Like my wife was unhappy. I was unhappy. Like life was pretty miserable. I was working 80, 90 hours a week. I just was shot. And I had a coach who, for all his faults, said to me one time, he said, Shane, you're stepping over hundreds to pick up dollars.
Oh.
Quit being such a wimp and do what you know you need to do. And what it reminded me, like first and foremost, was if I was a stock, would I buy myself? Mm-hmm. Like would I invest in, you know, the stock of Shane? And if I wouldn't, I really needed to take a really hard look at myself, what I was doing and why I was doing it. Mm-hmm. And so I started to understand my why. I started to understand why I do what I do. It's not about making money. Like, honestly, they're like, and you hear this with a lot of people, like, I get a check and I'm like, okay, like it doesn't move the needle for me in the slightest. I'm a builder. I love building. I love seeing the fruits of building, and I love giving. So we have a lot of nonprofits that we give back to, and we're blessed to be able to help people. And so one of the things that I always say to people is through wealth can come generosity. Mm-hmm. If you do it, if you're cool about it, right? There's a lot of people who are wealthy and they're not cool. Like in fact, the majority are probably not cool, right?
Yeah, right. I'm with you, man.
But it's because, like, man, like, how much do you really need? I mean, I was a fireman. I made a great living, and I was super blessed. So anything on top of that was just a cherry. And so for me, I think that the mentorship really, like, it aligned me with the trajectory I should have been on. Right. Kind of like the real Shane and the fake Shane were kind of running races, but I wasn't on the tracks, you know, and that coach bumped me onto the tracks and kind of slapped me across the face and said, hey, dude. And for him, it was just about the money. You're losing money. Like, you're losing a lot of money being a fireman. I was like, man, I'm losing money going to a job that gives me a pension, benefits, all that. And the reality was 100% true. I was. For me, though, it wasn't about the money. It was about, I was losing opportunities to be the best version of me. And as as I'm coaching people, like, sometimes we have these opportunities where we're just weak-minded. We all do that. Like, I do this all the time. You just have these days where you sit in front of your computer, you stare at your screen, you go, I am such a loser. I'm not doing what I said I'm going to do. Things are not going well. The reality is that if we don't get up when we're supposed to get up and do what we're supposed to do, in the way we're supposed to do it, we're really disrespecting the maker that created us to be so awesome.
Yes.
And so when you start to think about the world as not just being about you, but being about others, like, you know, if you have kids, if you have family, there are so many people that the best version of yourself can impact. It's like, how dare you not put yourself in position to be that person? Like, and so it's like when we think about life that way, you know, it just shifts why you do what you do, right? It shifts why you get up and get as early as you do and go to work and take risk and spend money to make money and do all these things and cut big checks to, you know, like cut small checks to make big checks. You know, all these things we do in business, we do it because we have a why. Mm-hmm. And the why for me is my dad had this legacy of generosity. He had a legacy of authentic friendship. Like, it wasn't about starting airlines or doing these things. It was about authenticity and generosity. And for me, I would be the last generation of my dad's bloodline. So for me, I really wanted to continue and create and build my own legacy off of that, based on a platform of generosity. And to be generous with my finances, it always works better if you can make more.
Yeah, right. Kind of works out better that way.
It's weird how that works, right?
So you got all this mentorship, you got this, mindset, and I don't know if we've been talking a lot on and offline. There's something else that you talked about, and it's, you have this, you turn business Shane on and or off, and you turn husband, family man on when you get home. How does that concept help you? Because I know there's a lot of people out there that have a really hard time doing that.
Yeah, I think what we most of us do is we rev our motor like all the time, right? Like we're redlining those RPMs and we never turn the engine off. And I think it's really, really, really important to build in business other people who can be leaders, right? And so the mindset really started, and we've talked about this before, where it's like when I'm at my office, man, I build a fence around myself. Nobody impacts my day but me, including my wife. And I know somebody on here is like, that's so insensitive, right? And I'm like, on the contrary.
Yes.
When I go home, when I have a weekend, when we go on vacation, and I ask my coaching clients this, they say, hey, I'm going on vacation. I go, are you going to work? They go, yeah. I go, then you're not going on vacation. You're just working remote, right? You're working from Aruba. You're working from Hawaii, but you're working. Like, come on, man. So for me, I build a fence around my day so that I can honor the people I'm with when I'm not working. And I think that's one of the things that's been really important for me is like, I build that wall, and I'm very strict around that because I just really want to honor the time with my wife.
And how does that help you be more effective at home and more effective in your business?
Yeah, I think like if you've ever been in business, you have a dream. The dream is that you'll own a business, not run a business. When you own a business, you step away and the business continues to thrive, right? And there's a very big difference from being an owner and really being an owner, right? And for me, my goal had always been, I wanted to be able to leave my cell phone with my team, go away for 10, 12, 14 days and be off the grid and have it not impact my consumers negatively. And so that would always be my goal. Now, another goal was I've been giving away we've been donating a lot of money to an organization that builds wells in underserved areas in Africa.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's called Living Water International. It's a phenomenal organization. And I've always had this goal. It's like, man, like, when you give money, you want to see the fruits of that, at some point. And so I've always said to myself, I'm going to go to Africa. I'm going to see the wells that I built or I helped build. And I'm going to just really see the blessings that come from all the hard work I've done. And so with my team, as we're going through the day, they'll say, hey, Shane, what would you do in this situation? Or what should we do? I say, what would you do if I was in Africa? And they go, oh, I go, how would you respond? What tools would you need in place if I'm in Africa and completely offline for you to still function? And so for me, that also kind of played into like, if I want to take a Sunday and not have to answer my phone, or Saturday or an evening, or take a Tuesday off and we're close to Canada, go up to Canada for the day. How do I function outside of work, and how does my team function within work? And I think it's having a mindset of, before you go away, did you build the system so you could go away? And a lot of people feel like, well, I'm so important, I'm so valuable, like nothing will run without me, right? Last time I checked, the guy who started Apple, like God rest his soul, no longer is alive, and they're still selling phones.
Yep.
Right. And so like I say that kind of callously, but I mean, I was a fireman, that's just how we talk. But come on, guys, like the reality is we should be able to build something that can go on without us for at least a short period of time. And if you can't, you don't own a business, you're being run by your business. And there's a huge distinction there.
Yeah. So how you're, going about your day to day, the actions that you take help build a business that you can step away from. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah. And because I think that what you have to do, one, ask yourself, is the activity, the technology, the tool that I'm using, is it scalable? Can I scale it? Like if you're an entrepreneur and you want to grow business from 1 to 20 to 50 to 100, is the tool, the technique, the strategy, the training, is it scalable to grow? If it's not, don't do it, in my opinion. Like find an alternative that you can scale with technology, your point of sale systems, whatever that may be. Right. So there's a part of it to where you have to build in advance something that scales. The other part is understanding that if I wasn't available, like if I got hit by a car and I'm all, in casts and like not able to move for 6 months, would my business survive? And if it wouldn't, I haven't done enough as a leader to build my people up to be leaders, right? We want to build them up to be leaders. It's like in the Navy, if you talk to, and ironically, I've had a bunch of friends in my life who've been Navy SEALs. They train in other skill sets so that if one guy goes down, let's say the sniper goes down. Well, there's another guy trained as a sniper. If the medic goes down, there's another guy trained as a medic. You don't just say, well, we're done. Well, the helicopter crashed. We're not going to catch bin Laden now. Like they adapt. Right. And I think that's really important in business to understand that mindset of build things at scale, have a plan that can be adaptable, and build leaders. And if you do, and you might be like, well, I have one employee. Great. Build that one employee to be a leader. Right. Because if you're gone, that one employee can still manage and then hire a junior and still move the business forward. So I think that's been something that over the years I've just learned through trial and error.
So how about when you go home, how does that, being able to step into just that role and staying in it help you in your business, outside your business? Because you're shutting down, right? When you're going home, basically.
Yeah. I mean, like my entrepreneurial brain doesn't shut down necessarily. Now that's just a part of my nature, but I'm not working. Like I'm not working on my phone till all hours of the night. I'm living my life. I'm a big fan of football. I watch a ton of football. Yeah. I watch a lot of football. Like I like my weekends are spent watching football, spending time with my wife. I like to cook. We travel a lot. And here's one thing to think about. Like life is so fleeting, right? My parents are at the age now where they're nearing the end of their time. And when I realized that, I said, man, I got to do something. I can't just because my mom remarried to an amazing man, and I thought, I got to do something fun. So we're going on a cruise to, going on a river cruise in Europe.
Oh, wow.
And like that's the result of all the hard work. I saw that story in my head before it played out. Right. And so for me, when I'm not working, I'm doing intentional, like awesome things with the people that I love. And I think that that's part of what's really important is when you do have success, give, be generous, and then celebrate and reward yourself. Because as sales-minded people, if we don't reward ourselves, pretty soon we start to our mojo starts to go away. Yeah, right.
The mind kid starts working on.
That's it.
So cool. Well, anything else you want to share that we missed before we wind out here, man? Because this has been a great conversation.
Man, the only thing I would say is that there are so many multimillionaires out there right now who are making minimum wage. And it's not because they're not capable. It's not because they aren't blessed. It's not because they don't have the abilities. It's because they don't understand their value and they aren't willing to take a risk and bet on themselves. And I think it all starts with that. It starts with understanding your why, understanding your value, and taking a step and always falling forward. And I think, man, if more people did that, there would be more of us hanging out together, having amazing conversations. And that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, I love it, man. And I love that challenge. Millionaires out there making minimum wage. And I just absolutely love that. So, well, listen, Shane, I appreciate you, man. I look forward to growing our friendship. And I'm so grateful and blessed that you are on and sharing your message with everybody. Why don't you go ahead and share how people can connect with you if they want to learn more about any of your businesses?
Yeah, social media is the easiest. Facebook, just look up Shane Kidwell. I'm all over the place. My mortgage company, Dwell Mortgage. My coaching platform, Next Level Loan Officers. LinkedIn, Instagram. Just reach out. It's funny. I just connected with a guy this morning from Tennessee, believe it or not, who we've never met, but we connected through social media, and he's just getting started in the mortgage industry. I love helping people because I got helped a lot. Yeah. From when I was young and my father passed away to now, there's been a lot of people that have helped course correct me on my journey. And so I think it's so fun to be able to do that and just, connect with other like-minded people.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you sharing that.
Thanks, Bryan.
And I appreciate you being on. And everybody, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the On Purpose Growth Podcast. If you want to connect with me, I hang out a lot on LinkedIn. So you can find me at linkedin.com/in/McDonald Bryan with a Y. And let's chat over there. And please tune in for the next episode of the On Purpose Growth Podcast. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the On Purpose Growth Podcast. Let us know what you thought in the comment section. For more from On Purpose Growth, go to onpurposegrowth.com. Subscribe here at BLTV for all of our content, including the daily Learn About Law podcast, Seize Your Business, Making Real Estate Fun, and Logical Logistics podcast, brought to you by O'Flaherty Law. Thanks for listening.